All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad that you're here to join us to talk about the Grants for Organizations on-year application process. We have a ton of content to cover today, so I'm going to jump right in here, and we're going to have people joining us throughout, I am sure. Just a note, we are recording this session, so it will be available on our website in the next couple of days as well. If I haven't already met you before, my name is Laura Weiss. I am a program director here at Maryland State Arts Council, and I am joined by my co-program director, Emily Sollenberger. And like I said, we are here to talk about the GFO on-year application process. So just to get us started, a couple of housekeeping things. This is just a quick reference shot of Google Meet. If you're not familiar with the platform, here are some of the buttons just to be aware of. As I said before, we are expecting a lot of people here today, so if you can, please remain on mute, unless of course you are speaking during the question and answers at the end. The mute button is the little microphone down towards the lower left-hand corner of your screen. You're welcome to appear on camera or off camera, however you are comfortable. There are closed captions available, the little CC button that's towards the middle of your screen. There is a raise hand function, the little hand icon that you'll see kind of moving down the line of different buttons. We are going to hold questions and answers at the end, but we are asking you to please wait for any questions and answers. Like I said, we have a lot of content to cover, so it's quite likely your question might be answered in a couple of slides. So if you have any questions that come up for you, just make a note of it, maybe on a notepad or something, and then we'll come back to those questions at the end. You can avoid the share screen option. I'm taking care of that today. And then of course, there's the leave meeting button as well. There is also the chat, which you can feel free to utilize. It's the little quotation box kind of towards your lower right-hand corner. But again, if you are thinking about questions, if you can hold off on putting those questions in the chat, we'll get to them at the end. The next couple of slides I'm going to read out loud, as we do for all of our public meetings. And the first slide is our land acknowledgement statement. And that is that we acknowledge the lands and waters now known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the Accohonic Indian Tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Choctaw Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nassau-Wawash Band of Indians, Piscataway-Conoy Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny River Band of Shawnee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. The next is our equity and justice statement, which is that the arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. The vision of the Maryland State Arts Council is to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And we do that through our mission, which is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all of the people of Maryland. The next slide shows 5 goals that are associated with our current strategic plan, which was adopted in 2019. We're currently in the beginning steps of our next strategic plan, but the current goals are as follows: to increase participation, provide intentional support, build capacity, leverage connection, and bolster Maryland arts. And sessions like this really hone in on goal 2, which is to provide intentional support. Additionally, we begin all of our public meetings with what we call creative meeting actions, and we invite you to just embrace these ideas as we go forward in today's presentation. That is to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, engage with everyone's as a gift, acknowledge that together we know a lot, enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry, share your idea and trust that it will be heard, use I statements, focus your language on the task at hand, hold one another accountable with care. Apply yes and, I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it. And balance speaking and listening. This is just a reminder of all of the many different professional development opportunities that we have going on here at the Maryland State Arts Council. We are definitely in full swing now that the fall has hit. We are in mid-October and there's lots of things going on. We invite you to check out our Eventbrite page, things on all kinds of different offerings that are coming up in the near future. And I do want to also just draw attention to our ways to get involved page. There's actually a very important ways to get involved that's listed right now on there, and that is that we currently have our call for panelists for the GFO program. So we are seeking panelists to review all of the applications that will go through the full application process. And I know that you're thinking, oh, I can't do that, I'm in an on year, but you can do that. It is possible to serve as a panelist if you are involved in an organization that is under review. It would just be a conflict of interest and you would not be involved in the review of that application. It's a really, really great way to get kind of behind the scenes, if you will, in the grant making process. We've heard time and time again that people come out of serving as a panelist, they feel like they're stronger grant writers and they understand the process more. So if that's of interest to you, please check it out. The application is open for the GFO panelist call and is being accepted through almost the end of the month. So you can find more information on our website. All right, to the agenda for today. So we are here to talk about the GFO on-year process. We're going to do a review of the Grants for Organizations program as a whole. We're going to talk about the GFO timeline and the next steps that you'll go through as an on-year organization throughout this entire process. We're going to walk through the application and the scoring rubric so you have an idea of what that looks like if you haven't looked at that yet. We're going to talk about the funding formula and how that applies to the GFO process. And we'll do just a quick review of Smart Simple, our grants platform, in case you are not familiar with that. And hopefully we will get through all of that and have a couple of minutes for questions and answers at the end. I do just want to note that this is particularly an overview for the on-year applications process. So we're not going to be looking at off-year or any other elements at this time. So if you are an off-year and you were just curious, you are welcome to stay. But the information session for off-year applications will be held later this month on Monday, October the 30th. All right, Emily, I am going to hand it over to you to talk about the GFO program.
Great, thanks, Laura. And hi, everybody. So good to see such a great group. We've got over 90 people here, which is amazing. So just in case you joined us a little bit late, I'm Emily. I'm a program director, co-program director to Laura. We both oversee the GFO program. And with that, a little bit about the GFO program, its overview. The purpose of this program is really to provide that intentional general operating support to our organizations across the state of Maryland and really sustain that arts infrastructure that's so important across the state. In FY24, our current fiscal year, we've awarded nearly $18 million through the GFO program in funding 291 organizations across the state. And you're going to hear this a couple of different times today. So the first reminder here is the on-year deadline for the full process is Wednesday, November 15th. And in Smart Simple, it's set for 11:59 p.m. And just a reminder, Laura and I typically work 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. generally, so technical assistance can be provided during our normal business hours. So if you're outside of that window, you might not get that additional tech support. So just be mindful of that when you're planning. Okay, so who can apply for the GFO program? If you're a returning applicant, you've already been accepted into the GFO program, and you've been notified most likely from both Laura and myself that you are indeed in an on-year application this cycle for coming up for FY25 funding. And that is by discipline cycle, so whichever discipline you're in or other circumstances, or if you're a new organization. So if you are a new applicant for the first time this year, you would have needed to submit that intent to apply back on September 15th. And that's an annual deadline that we have for any new organization or somebody who's lapsed in funding. So somebody who has not received funding in the previous year, you will always have to fill out an intent to apply on September 15th. But if you receive funding, you can just ignore that part and don't need to fill out that intent to apply. So once you're in the program, new organizations, you must complete a full application or this on-year application for FY25 funding. And that's the case in any year. Any new organization who's coming in for the first time will fill out an on-year full application. Okay, so you hear us say the on-year and off-year quite a bit as we talk about this program, and it's really because the GFO program operates on a 3-year cycle by artistic discipline. So when you're in an on-year, that's the time when you complete the full application process, and you're also reviewed by a panel to determine your panel score, and that's used to determine your funding. And we'll get into that a little bit later so you can see that in action. Then during your off years, those 2 years in between your 3-year cycle, your organization will complete a shorter application and will not go through the panel review process. So essentially you go through one on-year application every 3 years, and that panel score takes you through those off years as well. Coming up here in FY25, what we're looking ahead to for the November 15th deadline are those in the music discipline, literary, and visual and media arts, along with all of our new organizations coming in. And you'll see those that are not bolded there for FY26 and 7, those are the on years for those particular disciplines, and they're in an off year for this year. So you can kind of see how that 3-year cycle looks like. Okay, and to all of our new organizations to complete that full application in your first year, no matter the discipline, as I mentioned. Those organizations, if you do not fall into the music, literary, or visual arts discipline, you'll be put into a multidisciplinary panel. So you will be reviewed, by a panel. If you are a new organization and you fall into your normal kind of on your cycle by discipline, so music, literary, or visual media, you'll just go right into your cycle discipline and be in that particular panel. Okay, so the review process for an on-year application includes multiple steps. So it's not just that written application that you'll be completing on November 15th. That is indeed the first thing that will be done and will be reviewed. So the initial score and review by your particular panel of your written application will be completed first, and our panels review that on their own time through Smart Simple. Then as on your application, you will also have 2 what we call extension assignments completed by assigned panelists. It's an artistic activity visit and an in-depth conversation. So 2 different assignments by 2 different panelists. And we'll get into that a little bit later with more detail. You also will have application reviewing and scoring of financials by the State Arts Council staff. So that's myself or Laura, depending on who's your program director. And all of that culminates in a panel meeting where the panel will take all of the information that they received in the written application, all of their extension assignments, and then we'll come together for a discussion, and then they'll be able to resubmit final scores at that time. Okay, so a little bit more about those extension assignments. As I mentioned, there's two different assignments, one for an artistic activity visit and one for an in-depth conversation. So again, it'll be two separate panelists with two different goals, and they'll be visiting at two different times or speaking with you at two different times. It's really up to the panelist and the organization to schedule these events and conversations to happen. So you can expect a panelist to reach out to you as an organization rep in early February to schedule those assignments. If you're kind of making note of when to hear from whomever, that would be kind of that early point there. And a little bit more detail digging into what that artistic activity visit means. The goal of the artistic activity visit is for the panelists to get additional evidence of the written application through an interaction guided by the organization itself and your representatives. So what they're looking for is to tie an experience to the application's activities chart. So just looking to connect with your programming and your mission to learn even more and to be your cheerleader when it comes back to going to the panel meeting. So what an artistic activity visit might look like is attending a performance, an exhibition, or an event that you are holding. It could be a meeting where you look at different photos, videos, anecdotes, data from a recent, so within 2 years of artistic experience and activities that could be shared. It could also be a meeting to go over your organization's website, social media, and really collaboratively explore the highlights of your organization's programming, activities, and again, really connecting to the mission. It could also be a meeting with the artists associated with your organization to discuss the organization's artistic programs and activities. So really, this is all around what you do, what you're providing to your community to ensure that the panelists can connect with that written application as well. And the next one is the in-depth conversation. So what's different about this is it's more around asking questions and engaging conversation around further content to support the work of your organization. So this could be actually a meeting that could take place in person, but it could also take place digitally. So through Zoom or Google Meet or by conference call. It's really up to you and the panelists for this particular in-depth conversation. You can expect panelists to come with clarifying questions that relate directly to the written application. So if you've taken a look at the application draft questions, there are quite a few, so they might be asking very specifics to get more clarity around that written application to, again, bring it back to the panel meeting so they can be your cheerleader and your advocate in the room when talking about your organization. And folks that can be a part of this conversation, it's really up to the organization who you pull into the room. It could be your executive or managing director, artistic director, board president, or other board representatives, some of your artistic personnel. It's really up to you. Okay, so what that looks like in kind of our general timeline here is right now we're in October, November, where the application is open within Smart Simple. So you can go into your account right now and open up a draft and get started if you'd like. Again, November 15th is the on-year application. It's due by 11:59 on November 15th. And I'll also note that with our application deadlines, we do not provide extensions. So, if you feel like you're falling behind, please do be in touch with us if you're struggling, if you're challenged by the deadline, but please note that we typically do not provide extensions. In December and January, your panelists will be assigned to your application so they can start reviewing and scoring independently online. Laura and I will also start our staff reviews of your application to make sure we're very familiar with it. And we'll also start reviewing and scoring the financials that you provide in the application as well. In February and mid-March, that's where those extension assignments I was just talking about will get started. So you might want to look ahead at your calendars to see what might be open for panelists to attend between early February to mid-March. And we would like all of those extension assignments to be completed by mid-March, because the panel meetings will get started in late March and early April. And they are looking to be stretched probably across 3 weeks this year. We've got a lot of organizations to get through. Once that is over in May and June, Laura and I will start pulling together the recommendations based on what the panelists have recommended, and send that to our council, and for further detail, and start mapping out what those grant amounts and determinations look like based on our budget. You can expect a notification by early to mid-July. We cannot send notifications for that fiscal year 25 until the fiscal year actually starts. So you can anticipate, probably by mid-July is when you can see that notification out of Smart Simple. And then upon request, we're happy to prepare feedback and pull those remarks and recommendations from the panelists if you're interested for that. And then ongoing, we're here to support you throughout the process. So feel free to reach out anytime to either of us during any part of the year, for further support. And also noting here, these are FY24, our current funding report deadlines, but they do not change from year to year. So January 31st is always when our interim report is due. So upcoming this January 31st will be mid-year for FY24. And then final reports are always due on August 15th after the fiscal year closes in June. And again, these are for FY24, the next upcoming deadlines. Okay, and just a quick heads up that Laura and I are going to be out in attending a conference, Grantmakers in the Arts, in early November. So if you're planning ahead, just note that we're not going to be as available as we normally are November 6th through the 8th. So just make a note of that as you're planning, and it'll help avoid any last minute questions. And I think that's it from me. Am I handing it over to you now, Laura? I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Sure, that sounds great. It's a lot of information to cover. So from here, I'm going to actually jump into the full application, and we're going to walk through all of the questions just so that you can see them and see what the scoring rubric looks like for each of them. This is all available on our website. Just to note, you can download it there as a Word document, and both the rubric and the application itself. And of course, it's also currently open in Smart Simple. Sometimes we find that organizations like to use the external document available on the website just kind of as a planning tool and then enter it into Smart Simple. Everything does ultimately need to end up in Smart Simple, though, to be submitted. So just to make a note of that. So the application includes some basic contact information that you probably already have set up in your Smart Simple profile. One thing to note, if you haven't already put in your UEI, that must be entered into your profile. So make sure, I think many of you have already done this, but if that has not happened yet, the UEI replaced the DUNS number back in 2022, I believe. So it's been a while, but make sure that you do have that UEI if you don't have that yet. The narrative is broken down into 4 sections, which we're going to go through. And then there are financials and a few other attachments that are a part of the application. So to jump into section A of the narrative, section A is really focused on why the work of your organization is important. So the first question that you're going to look at, the first narrative, is what are the vision, mission, goals, and/or values of the organization? And you're going to see throughout all of these slides, you're going to see the question, and then in parentheses and italics, you'll see the excellent to outstanding response that is part of the scoring rubric. So for the excellent to outstanding response, we are looking for clear, specific, and thorough evidence of vision, mission, goals, and/or values. The next question is, how have the mission, vision, goals, and/or values of the organization evolved over the last 2 years? And if there are no changes in this area, consider sharing about any additional significant changes in leadership, staff, program goals, operations that may indicate any growth or evolution of the organization. The excellent to outstanding response here is looking for clear, specific, and thorough explanation of growth or evolution over the past 2 years. The third question is actually not a scored question. This is kind of a reference point for panelists to refer back to throughout the rest of the application. And that is asking, what is the geographic area of service for your organization? So that might be specific communities, counties, cities, is it statewide? It's really identifying that geographic area. And as it says, it's not scored. That response is used to guide the understanding throughout the application. So the panelists are going to refer back to this several times for different areas of the application. The second section of this is also not a scored section, also kind of a reference point for panelists and for us. And that is, within your geographic area of service, identify the percentage of programming serving the community. So that means other than tuition paying constituents. This would include free activities along with activities that are open to the public to attend that may be free and/or maybe paid opportunities. So again, this is not scored. And just kind of as a definition point, tuition paying includes programming with a fee for service model. So that typically includes things like classes, summer camps, workshops, things like that, that constituents or individuals are paying to participate in those activities. They are intended for a specific group of people, and they are not necessarily open to the public. And just a note there for that one, there is a drop-down menu, so you're going to select a range of percentages. So that's how you're determining what your percentage range is. And the last section of section A is the activities chart, which you are probably familiar with if you have done any sort of GFO application in the past few years. If you are a new organization, this might be new to you. But it's looking at a chart that explains how your statements that you just shared in A1, A2, and A3 are demonstrated in your day-to-day activities. So we're really looking to align what you do with your organization's mission, your intentions, your processes, and your programming. It is important to note, so this is a big chart, and you can add, I believe it's 20 or 30 activities in it, so it can get quite long. One thing to just, if you find that you're repeating things throughout, you're doing copy and paste throughout in different sections, is that we're really looking for kind of those main categories of programs. So it's not necessarily looking for example, if you were a theater, every single play that you're going to do during the year. It's looking at perhaps your main stage season as kind of a bucket of activities, if you will. So we're not looking for exact concerts. We're not looking for exact plays. It's really looking for those larger program types and program buckets that you are producing throughout the year. So we're looking at the list of activities for FY25. So that's July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. And then going across, you're looking at how does each activity connect to the vision, mission, goals, and values of the organization. In the next column, you're talking about the public value, meaning the importance and the relevance of the activity for the constituents in the geographic area of service. Again, that's what you identified in the previous response. In the next column, you're looking at how does each activity, how is each arts activity designed to reach yet to be known constituents in the geographic area of service. And finally, if the arts activity is tuition based, how does that activity reach beyond those that are paying tuition? And if the activity is not tuition-based, you can just put an NA in that last column. All right, moving on to section B here. Section B is addressing how your organization designs its programs. So the first question is looking at your creative process. Describe the creative process within your organization's programming. Include a description of how artistic decisions are made, who is involved from the organization, and how the constituents and communities, including those identified in question A3, are also involved in the programmatic development and evaluation of the organization's artistic activities. The excellent to outstanding response here is an explanation that clearly illustrates the creative process, which includes creative roles, responsibilities, and authentic constituent collaboration, where constituents are essential in the artistic making process. The next question is looking at long-term or strategic planning. So that is to explain the process for long-term or strategic planning. And if your organization does not have a long-term or strategic plan, how do you design and plan programs and activities for the future, or any steps towards a formalized process? In your response, explain how the process aligns with your vision, mission, goals, or values, and share where you are currently at in that strategic or long-term planning process. Are you actively creating a plan, implementing it, evaluating it, etc.? And share who is involved with the process: board, staff, volunteers, partners, the public, consultants, all of those types of categories. Here we're looking for a clear and specific explanation of long-term or strategic planning process that directly connects with vision, mission, goals, or values. Moving ahead, section C. Section C is a long one, has several questions, and this is looking at how your organization operates. So the first one is actually an attachment, and this is asking you to attach a graphic or a chart of the organization's staffing and board structure. So that might include the board, the staff, artists, volunteers, etc. within that chart. And we're really looking for that clear and specific visual explanation of the organization's staffing or board structure. And we are really looking for some kind of chart situation in this, some kind of visual, whatever that means for your organization. This is not looking for a listing of your board members, just a list. So really think about that, how that is visually explained, the structure of your organization. Number two is, how is your staffing and board structure, and that might include board, staff, artists, volunteers, etc., currently successful? And we ask that you please include specific indicators of success in your response. And the excellent to outstanding response here includes a clear and specific explanation of indicators of a successful staffing and board structure. The third question is looking at what staffing/board, and that again might include board, staff, artists, volunteers, etc., and/or financial challenges affect the operation of your organization, and how are the challenges routinely identified and addressed? And you might consider sharing specific examples or initiatives here. The excellent to outstanding response includes a clear and specific commitment to regularly identifying and addressing staffing or board and/or financial challenges. And we are really looking for, what those challenges are and how you're addressing those. Every organization has challenges, so we are looking for that here. Number 4 is to describe your organization's process of financial oversight. Within your response, address the procedures for monitoring and approving the organization's finances, and also the process for developing and approving the annual budget. An excellent to outstanding response includes a detailed procedure for developing, monitoring, and approving finances along with the annual budget. And number 5 is looking at some demographics. So based on demographics, which we do offer a website here that you can utilize, or you can use other sources that you may find. How does your staffing, and again that means board, staff, artists, volunteers, etc., reflect the population of your geographic area of service. Include specific demographic information for your geographic area of service as evidence, and include what strategies are in place to consider further diversity of your staffing in the future. And again, the excellent to outstanding response here includes that the organization, staff, and board clearly reflecting the constituency of the geographic area of service, or are aware of how they may not fully reflect the area and have strategies in place to further diversity of their staff and board in the future. All right, this is the final section, I promise. We're getting to the end of the application. This is section D. And this is looking at how your organization evaluates what it does. So the first question for section D is, what is the sensory or emotional experience hoped to be achieved through your organization's arts programming? Here you might consider including examples of programs and/or intentions related to how you'd want your audiences or your community to feel when engaging with your organization. And the excellent to outstanding response here is that the programming process directly considers intended sensory and emotional impact. The second question in section D is, how do your arts activities consider non-dominant norms, values, narratives, standards, or aesthetics, including non-Eurocentric standards of excellence? And the excellent to outstanding response here is that the programming process indicates regular consideration of non-dominant norms, values, narratives, standards, and aesthetics. And we have added a definition here of what we mean by non-dominant norms, values, narratives, standards, and aesthetics. It's included in the physical application itself, but I'll just read it here for reference for you as well. And that's that non-relevant and Eurocentric standards of excellence and beauty often prevail in describing and assessing the aesthetics of work that is socially and civically engaged. Non-dominant norms go against these standards of excellence. Non-dominant norms consider renewing and promoting a dynamic critical paradigm reflective of diverse cultures as embodied by community-based social and civic arts practices. And this actually comes from a document that many of you are probably aware of called Aesthetic Perspectives, which we can drop a link to that in the chat either now or later, but that is coming directly from that particular document, just so you're aware of it. And finally, the last question of the narratives is section D3, and that is to please give one recent example of the organization's greatest successes and explain why it is considered successful. In your response, consider indicators of success. And this one is looking for that evaluation to clearly articulate why a specific program or event was determined to be successful. So that's a lot of information, and I'm sure you're going to go back and read those questions many times over. But just so you're aware that, obviously you can see that we have the scoring rubric is very clearly set up to go with each question, and you can reference the full scoring rubric, which breaks down the different types of responses. These are the excellent to outstanding, so next, the next level down and so forth from there. You can find all of that on the website if you're curious. And that's exactly what the panelists will use to score your rubric or to score your applications. All right, Emily, I'm going to pass it over to you to talk about some finances.
Yay. Oh, thanks, Laura. That's a lot of information. We know this is a lot for you all too. So I dropped a couple of links that Laura mentioned. There's resources on the website. So there's a link a couple times in there. Animating Democracy's Aesthetic Perspectives. I just dropped a link in there too, just for additional resources. And again, we're here to help you through the process. So once you get started, hopefully it'll become a little bit more clear and we can help you along the way. So in addition to the written narrative, there's also financials that are required and reviewed very thoroughly because that also impacts the funding formula that I'm going to get into. But as a starting point, thinking about your organization and your total allowable income number, that's going to determine the type of financial statement that you provide to us. So if you're an organization that has income under $600,000, a financial statement that's signed by a professional accountant or your organization's fiscal officer, somebody who's authorized to sign off on financial statements, can submit any type of kind of internal document, if you will. So if you have a profit and loss statement or another way that you're pulling together your financial statements for the year, that is a perfectly acceptable type of financial statement. Again, we're looking for it to be signed and authorized. If you're an organization that has over $600,000 in income, we would be looking for audited financial statements. So that ensures that an independent external auditor or CPA firm is reviewing your financial statements, and that we're looking for a completed audit from your last completed fiscal year. That should be submitted with your application on November 15th. However, we know that folks, your audit schedules can go beyond the fall. So if you're in the middle of your financial review with auditors, just let Lauren and myself know, whoever your program director is, if you think it's going to be delayed, and we can work with you to get those finalized financial statements by March 1st, 2024. That is our last deadline. It is currently in the guidelines as well. So if you need that for reference and further details, the guidelines are also posted on the website. So you have some details there. If you're not sure, just be in touch with us either way. And we will work with you just to make sure we've got the best financial statement, most complete, and we can go from there. And the importance of that particular financial statement is that we need those numbers to show up in the financial table, which is also part of the application. And what Laura and I do is we look to make sure that they match in some way. So we know that what you're providing in the application itself matches the numbers in your financial statement. So the table is really a form that you need to complete that shows the income and expenses for your organization or arts program from your recently completed fiscal year. So we would be most likely looking at FY23 if you're on the fiscal year, or calendar year 22 as your last completed fiscal year. So again, we're looking for the table to match your financial statement that you're providing. Within the table, in addition to the income and expense numbers that you're providing, we're also asking that you provide a clear note or instruction to where we can find those numbers within your audit or that financial statement that you're providing. That way, we're just connecting the dots a little bit easier. Sometimes you're pulling, maybe a couple different categories from one place into another place. It's just helpful so we know, as much as we can up front before coming to you with questions. There's also a template for the financial table on the website. Laura and I also have it, I'm sure, on our desktops that we can send to you in an email as well, if that's easier. It's uploaded as an Excel spreadsheet, so that way you can download it and start dropping in numbers and work with your accountant or whoever is helping you with the financials early on. And Laura and I are also going to prepare an instructional video for the first time on the financial table. That way we can provide even further clarity around the process and go over any common questions that come up through that. And part of this is Laura and I also will be completing a financial review of the financial information that you provide. So this is not part of the panel that reviews your financials, just internal staff review. So what we're looking for is that you have financial information indicates a strong commitment to multiple diverse income streams. We also are looking for your organization if there's any significant financial changes that they're supported with programmatic cause or in alignment with your organization's mission, vision, other details that you've provided. So we understand if you have a significant amount of income that is out of the norm, or a decrease in some way. We know that there's a lot of up and down right now with financials, especially coming out of the pandemic. So as long as we can connect the dots there, that's what we're looking for. And if your budget is over $600,000, we're also looking at an additional piece if your organization is operating with a cash reserve of at least 1 year. Again, those are for our larger organizations over $600,000. We're looking at that particular piece. Okay, and additional attachments, just so you're prepared. Again, Laura noted this with C1 is that graphic of your organization's staffing structure. Typically, or in the past, I should say, this was located in the attachment section of your application. It's now moved, so you're attaching it right under where C1 actually is asking you about that information. So it's a little bit, it's under the programming information rather than attachments. You'll also be asked to attach your IRS letter of determination along with an updated signed Form W-9. Some helpful hints that we always, and you've heard us say it already, is application feedback. Before you submit your application, you're welcome to be in touch with either Laura or myself to talk through portions of your application and offer feedback. You might be struggling or challenged by 1 question, 2 questions. We may not be able to review your full application, but we can certainly hone in on a couple of the sections that you might be having questions about. We do ask that typically 15 business days to get feedback for GFO. We ask that you mark down October 25th as a goal to get requests in by that time. Otherwise, we might not be able to accommodate anything after that, just based on schedules and how many folks there are applying this year. So just reach out to us about your about availability. We can obviously ask or answer your questions via email, jump on a phone call, jump on a meeting to make sure you're feeling good. All right, so I'm going to jump into the funding formula itself. So you've got a little bit of a better understanding of how all these pieces come into play, especially the financials here. So when we determine funding, we use a formula, and there's 3 variables that make up the formula. It's the total allowable income, your panel score, which is determined through the on-year application and review process. A cap allocation percentage is the 3rd variable. And you'll see all 3 of those are multiplied together to get the grant amount for the year. So for example, you'll see at the bottom, if you're a $500,000 organization with allowable income number of $500,000, you get a 90% on your panel review, and say the cap allocation is 7%. You'd be looking at a grant of $31,500 as an example of how that works in action. There's a few other layers here that are new. You probably have heard us talk about the equitable funding formula, but if you're new to this process, this might be the first time you're hearing about this. So in addition to the funding formula that's applied to everybody, as of this current year, FY24, we are looking at a different structure for the cap allocation percentage variable. So that last piece of the funding formula. The shift is that rather than applying the same cap allocation percentage for every organization, so whether you're $100,000 or a $20 million organization, we're adjusting that, and that's why we're calling it the equitable funding formula. So we're looking at 5 different tiers based on your allowable income. So you'll see that on the screen, that tier 1 is our smaller organizations, and tier 5 is all the way up to our 10 million plus organizations. We went through an editing process, and where we determined a few goals and priorities with moving into this kind of tiered space. One, it's going to take it's a 5-year transition. So FY24, the current fiscal year, is year 1, and the application that you're moving into for FY25 is year 2 of 5. The overarching goals here on the screen, that over a 5-year transition, we're looking to increase the smaller organizations cap percentage towards 15%. And that our tier 5, our large organizations, are going more towards 4%. Again, we're taking steps every year over 5 years to get to this place. So it's not an automatic 15% for tier 1. And this is also depends on our own budget allocation and how the numbers work themselves out. So these are just a big stretch of goals here that we have based on an editing process a couple of years ago. So we're in it now. And Laura, if you go to the next one, here we go. There's also some other priorities that came up as well that we're implementing. We also have a grant cap amount this year, so no one organization in year 1 could have a grant award of $1.4 million or over. We did not have to implement that this past year, but looking into FY25 in year 2, there will be a cap of $1.3 million, so no one organization will get that amount or higher. Some other transition priorities we're looking at when we're determining all the funding is that tier 1 and tier 2, those are our 2 smallest groups that will increase at a faster rate or a steady rate over 5 years. Tier 3, our middle tier, will remain stable. And tiers 4 and 5, those are our higher, our larger organizations will not decrease at a rate greater than 1.5% annually. And what that looks like in action. So for FY24, this is the breakdown that we determined. So I know it's a lot of numbers here on the screen, but you'll see tier 1 at the top had an 8.3705 percentage. And tier 2 is at 7.7. Tier 3, so that's our mid group to maintain and stay steady, it was at 6.7. And then tier 4 is at 6.1, and tier 5, our largest organizations, were at 5.75. So you can see those priorities were put into place, and we took that first step towards the bigger goals that we have. And you'll see the breakdown of organizations, the amounts, and the percentage of overall funding too. Okay, that's a lot there. So I'm going to pass it back to Laura for our last section, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time left over.
Yes, lots of information, lots of numbers. I'm going to move through the Smart Simple portion relatively quickly here, just to give a quick overview of it. I think at this point you should all be registered in Smart Simple. All of the applications must be submitted through that platform. That is marylandarts.smartsimple.com. You want to make sure that your organizational profile is up to date. So if you've had any changes in who the contact is or anything like that, make sure that that is reflected in your profile, as there are some automated responses and things like that associated with Smart Simple. So make sure that the email address is the correct email address that you want to get any kind of notifications from. This is what it looks like to log in. Again, that's marylandarts.smartsimple.com. I'm not going to walk through the new to the system part because you all have you are a part of the GFO process or you have submitted an intent to apply. So you should all have a profile of some sort at this point. So once you log in, you're going to come to a dashboard and you're going to look for funding opportunities on it. It might say 12, it might say a different number, just depending on what is available at that particular time. But click on that and it's going to open up a list of all of the different applications that are available to organizations. What you're looking for is the one that says Grants for Organizations. And just make sure that you're looking for the one that says full application to the right of the Apply Now button. There's a couple of different ones. You don't want the off year. You don't want the intent to apply. You're looking for the full application. So once you locate that, you're going to click the blue Apply Now button, and it's going to open up the application for you. An important first step is that you have to hit the Save Draft button to begin the application. That's going to kind of open it up for you. So click Save Draft, and that's then going to open the full application for you. It is really important to note that this system does not auto-save. So just a helpful hint, make sure you click save draft sort of, routinely as you're working through the application, just so you don't accidentally lose something. We don't want some kind of technical glitch to happen. Hit the save draft button. But once you're in there, it's pretty much going to walk you through all of the questions. As you can kind of see on this screenshot, there are different tabs that you'll see kind of along the top of it, and that will break down the different portions of the application. It will show you exactly where uploads are needed for those different attachments that we talked about. The bulk of the application, of course, is the narrative portion, so there will be text boxes throughout for each of those narrative responses. Oh, that was it. I thought there was one more slide, but there's not. So after you are ready to go, once you've finished everything, you've hit save draft throughout, there will be a button then to then submit at the very end. So once you are ready to do that, you'll click the submit button, and then that will lock everything in, and it will send it to me and Emily so that we know that everything is in for you. We're here to help for any smart, simple questions that you may encounter, so please feel free to reach out if you have any technical questions at all. And this is just the final reminder. We've said it multiple times, but the full application is due on November the 15th, 2023 at 11:59 p.m. And as Emily said, there really are, there's no exceptions, no extra time, anything like that. So make sure that your application is submitted within Smart Simple by that deadline. And we have like 2 minutes here for any questions. So I'm going to make sure that we leave up our email addresses. I think that you probably have them. You've probably been in contact with us. But certainly if we have not answered one of your questions, please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. And we are happy to address them via email. We can do them on a call, a meeting, whatever you need. Emily, are there any, I haven't seen the chat in the past few minutes. Is there anything we can address quickly?
Yeah, just really quickly, because I know we've got just 2 minutes here before 1 o'clock, but Jane is asking about financials as a college. If you are an arts program, so meaning you're a college or a university or an organization where your full mission is not all arts-based, you'd be asked to submit what we call our arts program financial statement in addition to your full audited financials. So for example, if you're a college, we'd be looking for your audit for the whole school, but really hone in on an arts income and expenses only is what we'd be basing your funding on. And we can talk through what that looks like one-on-one as well. Anna Astrid asks about what happens if public performances are in December and June. So if you're referring to that extension assignment, there are alternative ways. So if you don't have something going on during that February and March timeframe, you can set up meetings to look through videos, social media, website, other examples of that programming so that your panelists can get an idea of what you do. There's a question about the 3-to-1 match. That is something that we look out at as other additional income sources. So if the State Arts Council funding is the one, we'd be looking at 3 times amount in other funding to match that. And we look at that in the final report to end the year to make sure that's there. What did I get? Copy of slides and the recording will be posted on the website. And Laura and I also, if you haven't noticed, we send lots of emails and reminders out. So we'll probably drop those in an email as well at some point, just to have at the top of your inbox. Can email Q&As be shared with everyone? Typically, we try to address questions like common questions that come up. So yeah, we try to share as much as we can across the board. But if there's anything in particular, Christine, we're happy to send. And I think I caught everything. Yeah, the video will be up in the next few days as soon as we can get it up there. Am I missing anything, Laura?
I think there's a couple other quick questions, but I think that we'll have to address them probably one-on-one. Certainly, please feel free to reach out with any questions that we did not get to. Sorry, we were a minute over here. That's a lot of content to cover. I did want to just, some people were asking about the financial video as well. Emily and I are set to record that shortly, so we will also share that just as soon as we're able to on the website. And like Emily said, we'll also send anything out too. So I think that we will leave it there for today.
Yeah, thanks everybody for coming today. This is a great group, a lot of content, and hopefully you're feeling more comfortable in moving ahead.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Have a nice afternoon.
We'll see your application soon.